Hey, what's up everybody? Salon Dia Hammond, also known as Suhan Baby, here with another video on how to analyze a quick deal for real estate investment. You know, I've been encouraging you to invest in duplexes, triplexes, or quads, multifamily unit, to generate extra income for you. Well, here's a quick scenario on how you can figure out if that deal is a great deal, if it is positive cash flowing, and if you should actually get in bed with it. First thing we want to talk about is gross income. Gross income is your revenue before expenses. So that's your rent that you take in before any of these expenses occur. Your net income is your revenue after expenses. So that's what you're actually, I like to say, is taken to the house. That's the money after you paid all your bills, your expenses, that's what you're taking to the house. So in this scenario, we're going to assume that you are purchasing an $80,000 duplex, right? Duplex, 2 doors, 2 units, meaning you can put 2 families in there. You can live in one and rent the other, or you can rent both of them, all right? We're assuming that your mortgage is $300 a month, and we are assuming that you are getting $800 per unit in rent, which equates to $1,600 in gross income. Gross income, again, is your revenue, your money, your rent, before any expenses are taken into account. So $80,000 duplex you're buying, $300 is your mortgage, the rent that you're collecting is $800 per unit, which equates to $1,600 a month that you're collecting on this one building, okay? Now let's figure out our debt. We already know the mortgage is $300. All right, another thing that people tend to overlook is taxes and insurance. You are going to have to pay taxes and insurance on your property. There's no way around it. The only way that I can think of that you can get around taxes is if you are a 100% disabled vet and you are actually living in that property, then you don't have to pay taxes. However, that's not the vast majority of people watching this video. In order to know what your taxes are going to be, I recommend, if you're looking at a piece of property, call the tax assessor's office in that area and ask what are the taxes for that property. You also want to call an insurance agent and get a quote on insurance, because the last thing you want to do is go buy a deal and you think you know what the taxes are. You think you know what the insurance is going to be, and then you are grossly wrong, which then has you in a negative cash flow, okay? So you want to call and get the quotes on that. Property management fees are typically 10% of your gross rents, which in this case, the gross rents is $1,600. Now, if you want to eliminate paying $160 a month, then you can manage the property, which means that you will execute the lease, you will show people the property, you will be responsible for collecting the money, the rent, and you'll be responsible for any maintenance and upkeep that needs to be done. Or if you want to be hands-off and run it like a complete business, then you would actually hire a property management company, which in most cases charge anywhere between 6 to 20%, depending on how big the deal, how small the deal, of your gross rents, which in this scenario, the gross rent is $1,600, which means if we hired a company, we would probably spend $160 a month for them to take care of handling the tenant, making sure everything's okay, and giving us our money, okay? Vacancy rate. I tend to like to figure out 10% of the gross rents. The vacancy rate is just in case, you know, the property is vacant for some period of time. You want to work in a cushion, right? So what I would do, I would set up, if I were you, I would set up a separate bank account just to put this cushion in every month. So every month, like clockwork, when I get my $1,600 in rent, I'm going to take $160 and I'm going to put it in a bank account somewhere, just in case for some reason somebody vacates the property. Something happens and I just need that cushion, it's there. Also, be mindful of where you're purchasing your property. You might be purchasing in a neighborhood that has homeowners association fees. Some of those fees can be quite costly. So you want to check and see if there are fees or if there are not fees. In this particular scenario, I am stating that there are no fees for homeowners association, which will probably be the case for most of you. Also, maintenance. That's any lawn care or any upkeep. You want to put in a cushion. Most people say about 10% of your rent. I typically do $100 a month, because when you take into account the vacancy rate and the maintenance, that's $260 as a cushion. Some people don't even put that much of a cushion away. That's pretty much almost 20% of the rent. So some people don't put that much of a cushion away. They put anywhere between 10 to 15% a month. So that's going to be on you as far as your vacancy and your maintenance, how much you want to put away. And then utilities. Another thing that's important is when you're buying a duplex, triplex, or a quad, sometimes the meters are not separate. And what I mean by that is the owner has to pay the electric bill for all the units and the water bill for all of the units. Now, knowing that, you may want to increase your rent so that you offset the costs that you may incur. Now, there are some units where the electric meter is separate and the renter actually pays for that. However, the owner may still pay for the water. Water and sewer may be included in this rent. Or you may be buying a piece of property where you don't even have to pay the utilities that are inside the units. Instead, you might be buying a piece of property where the only thing you're responsible for is maintaining the lights on the outside. And on some properties, you don't even have to do that. So you may have a utilities cost, you may not have utilities cost. These are questions that you need to ask when you are going to look at that property, when you're doing your due diligence, and when you're factoring how to analyze if this is going to be a deal that is positive cash flow or not. All right, so we know what our gross income is, right? Our gross income is $1,600. Right, when we add all this up, it comes to approximately $1,100. So our expenses, right, are $1,100. Our net income is revenue, which is $1,600 after expenses. I'm sorry, which is the gross income, $1,600 after expenses. So our net income is $500 a month. $500 a month is our net income on one duplex. Imagine if you had a triplex. Imagine if you had a quad. Triplex with 3 people, 3 doors, 3 units. Quad, four families, 4 rents, 4 doors, 4 units. Imagine it starts to add up over time, right? So if you are renting this property out and based on this scenario, on these numbers, $500 a month is what you would take to the house. That's what I like to say, take it to the house. Well, imagine doing that every month and then making $6,000 a year. Let's just imagine you don't have any vacancies. Let's just imagine you don't have, well, we're going to have maintenance because you're probably going to have to do the yard work and whatnot. But let's just say you don't have any vacancies. I mean, that's another $160 times 12 that's just sitting in the bank account, right? Just sitting there just in case something happens. But we know for a fact that based upon this scenario, on this duplex, upon someone occupying both units for the entire year, you would make $6,000, $500 a month. Some people go and get a part-time job to do that. They have to put up with other people's BS when you can actually get property. Here's the great thing about when you get that property, you have a physical piece of building that you own. Here's another great thing about that property. You have tenants paying down your mortgage, which means they're causing you to have more equity in that property without you paying a cent. They're taking care of it. Well, let's just say you wanted to live in one of the duplexes. You could. If you lived in one of the duplexes, then you would get $800 a month in rent. And based off this scenario, right, I would definitely not pay property management fee if I'm living in one of those. I would just collect the rent myself. And so basically my expenses would go down by $160. And so now my tenant is essentially paying my mortgage of the place where I'm laying my head. I'm sorry, I'm looking from here to here, guys, with the camera. But my tenant is actually paying the mortgage where I'm laying my head, and I'm not paying for it. It's a piece of real estate that I'm eventually going to own once I pay off the entire loan at the bank that somebody else is paying for. Now, here's another quick way to analyze if a deal is good or not. I personally like to do it this way because it pretty much kind of guarantees me that I know what's going on with the deal. But if you don't have a lot of time, you can take the purchase price, right? The purchase price, which in this case is $80,000, and you can multiply it by 1%. And that's how much rent you have to get in order for this deal to make sense. So in this case, if I purchased a duplex for $80,000, in order for this deal to make sense, I need to collect at least 1%, which is $800 in rent for it to make sense. Now, you got some people, they don't do the 2%. I mean, they don't do the 1%. They want to collect at least 2%. The 2% rule says that 2% of the purchase price has to equate to the minimum amount of rent you're getting in order for this deal to make sense. So in this case, it would be $1,600. If you look at this scenario, our gross rents are $1,600. Seems like a pretty good deal. You're making $500 a month after expenses are paid. That is your net operating income. So you can find out more information by going to my YouTube. Check out our new videos on my YouTube. We're going to talk more about cap rate and some more stuff in my new real estate course. You can connect with me at suham.com.